Hey, Kaitlin. You're on mute, just a reminder. I can't hear you.
Okay. I'm on mute. Hi.
Hey.
Sorry.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? How's everybody else? Say hey, Pete. Let us know you're here. Hey, Millie. Millie's not here.
Making sense with Move to Amend. Here we are.
Yeah. And for anybody who doesn't know, Move to Amend is the national campaign to amend the U.S. Constitution to end corporate constitutional rights and also money is speech with the We the People Amendment, which is in Congress and waiting to move forward. And we couldn't need it any more than we need. Like, it's like every week, it's like, okay, and corporations didn't rule the world. None of this would be going down this way.
I know, right in front of our faces all the time. So much right now. This week was a really long year, huh?
This week, we were talking about this before we earlier today, and we were just like, do we even want to do this week? I don't even know how to talk about this week. I really thought that they were going to at least come up with something for the pandemic situation as it's spiking still everywhere. I saw California has 600,000 cases now, which is where I am. I'm in San Jose at the moment.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's been a hot spot since the beginning. It's really bad here. And Nevada still hasn't distributed most people's like unemployment that they filed for in March. And so like tons of my neighbors are being evicted and they're just like, all right, yeah, I don't know, die and be homeless. Like, of course we know this is possible because like the HIV/AIDS epidemic and like so many years of like people experiencing these things, but now like everyone's experiencing these things. And it's like, yeah, they really don't care about us, do they? They are not on our team. And they all just went home and went on vacation and we're like, like rent and food and like medication.
Yeah, I think it really goes to show how extremely out of touch, almost every member of Congress is from the reality of their constituents. I mean, obviously there's like degrees of evil and heartlessness going on there, but there's also a level where, none of them showed any leadership between when this all started and where we are now. I have to say that I haven't seen any leadership that gives me any kind of hope that anything good can happen from there. And that's just honestly how I'm feeling this week. So it's a little bit hard to sort of be in this position, like, okay, when it's just like, wow, this is what we have to deal with, which is why last night, general strike, at least on Twitter, was like trending number 2 because people
at one point I saw.
Was it number 1? You went to bed later.
Yeah.
So
yeah, by like 3 a.m., I'm like, general strike is trending number 1 on Twitter. Yeah, that sounds about right. Conditions are ripe. And as you're talking about like the complete disconnect from where people are at, the tone deafness of the moment, like not only did Congress go home without addressing another stimulus at all, but I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like a giant uprising happening against police brutality. And like the electoral situation at the moment doesn't look great.
Yeah, so let's just get that one out of the way a little bit. We're not, Move to Amend. So here's the deal. On Making Sense, we have told all of ourselves that we can kind of talk freely, if nothing else, because everyone at Move to Amend is laid off right now and on unemployment ourselves, because the pandemic also hit us pretty hard in terms of our, a lot of our supporters not having extra funds to make donations. And frankly, this has been something that has been brewing for a while because a lot of our supporters have invested a lot of money into presidential races going all the way back to 2016. And that's, I think, where, you know, our folks Move to Amend and sort of more broadly also have, you know, we've invested a lot collectively. I do want to point out that we have basically nothing to show for it. So perhaps we need to rethink that strategy a little bit. But where we are on this is that we still aren't really interested in like going into a bunch on candidates. You know, I mean, this election is just going to, it's a disaster no matter where you look, no matter what happens, we're going to be in a disaster. Billionaires are going to be in charge of dictating to the candidates who then, you know, whoever it is, whether Trump stays there, whether he refuses to leave, whether Biden is able to secure it, all of that in terms of like who's going to benefit and who's going to be screwed is a lot the same. So that's all true, but it's a real question of like how you're going to vote. And we're not here to tell anybody to vote away, I guess is my point there.
Yeah.
But to your point, Jessica, about it is kind of crazy that we're in this situation where we have the largest mobilization and uprising against police brutality and misconduct and the whole police, you know, prison industrial system. And the person who's single-handedly probably most responsible for that systemically is Joe Biden in terms of policy. And then the VP pick is somebody who is part of law enforcement.
And a criminal prosecutor. Like, that's what people are really craving right now. So yeah, I'm super too angry to talk about that on this moment right now. But I do think, that needs to be said, that like there are so many ways in which both parties just don't care. And I think that too, like what you said about Move to Amend's fundraising and a lot of our grassroots support kind of leaking since the 2016 election is like, it's very dangerous to put all your eggs into electoral politics. Like that's not only like financially, but like your energy and your power, because as we know, elections aren't democratic. Like it's an illusion if you think that like your voting is like happening in a democratic fashion at all, then like it's organizing that actually makes the difference. And we're going to have to be organizing no matter who's in office. It doesn't matter. So that's like a thing you can do. You know, electoral politics is one tactic, but like there's some really interesting stuff happening right now on the streets. And so I think it's important to keep our eye on the prize, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, also I have to say, I just do feel very frustrated. I mean, I'm always kind of a hopeful person. You wouldn't work on amending the Constitution to structurally change some of the most fundamental sort of tenets of our legal system, enshrining property with more rights than human beings and money, if you weren't like an optimistic person at the end of the day. So I'm still that person, but I am feeling, you know, can you imagine if we were in France and this, you know, like stuff would be on fire. The Eiffel Tower would be on fire if they were just like, we're going home, peace. You're in the worst, you know, health crisis. And incidentally, so many people don't have health care because nobody fought for Medicare for all at all to even be temporarily offered during the pandemic. And you're all on your own. It's like, well, what would people do with that on their ownness? So we need to get it together as a country because we are basically, you know, it was a giant, like, let them eat cake, middle finger to all of you. And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was such a let them eat cake moment. It's unbelievable that there was such a lack of leadership on it. I mean, it's not unbelievable, right? It's totally believable, but it's, you're right. What's unbelievable is the lack of sort of mass outrage. Like there is outrage, but that's what makes it so interesting that General Strike was trending last night. Like, not that a hashtag makes a movement, but what it shows is that there's been a real moment of like, I'd say, empowerment on the left and with just working people who maybe don't consider themselves like on the left, but they have jobs and they no longer have those jobs and they don't have healthcare. And people are like, wait a second, maybe this is a moment. You see the dismantling the post office, which we could talk about too, which I think is super important. Congress telling us to eat cake. The best the Democratic Party can do is like crime bill manufacturer, and like career prosecutor, and people don't have healthcare or money, and all of our friends are dying. So like conditions are pretty ripe to set the shit on fire. You know what I mean? And people are talking September 1st. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but like we should be thinking larger than what we've told is like an acceptable thing to ask for. If we're going to have a general strike, like what kind of demands are we talking about? Let's not let them be co-opted, but actually consider, you know, what we actually need and not what crumbs we might be thankful for. And just to take a moment to plug, to, you know, Move to Amend has been having a conversation for 10 years about what's the root of the problem, what systemic changes are needed to like make actual transformative like revolution happen. And we're picking back up this conversation this fall, and we're going to have a PMA, which is a People's Movement Assembly, about constitutional renewal. So we're going to be talking about like, you know, what's the current situation we're in? What's the world that we can actually envision that's better, and that's the world that we want and deserve? And like, what can we practically do to start moving towards that? What's already being done? And so we're going to have this conversation virtually this fall, and we want to get people together to talk about this, people who care about all different fronts of struggle and, you know, want to have a conversation about something better. So I think it's an important moment not to lose sight of like the true revolutionary potential of the moment.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I mean, that is what drew us to, when we came together to do Move to Amend, it wasn't because really we felt as though this amendment was, you know, some sort of silver bullet that was going to solve all the problems. It is an entry point to helping people understand systemically what's going on, and the fact that this isn't a democracy. It's never been a democracy. There's multiple reasons why, but structurally, even when we are able to gain some power in various places, the system is still fixed against us. You know, the legal system is what we're focusing on, but and then the money in politics, you know, takes us to the electoral system. And then there's also the financial system, which is also fixed against us. And so us being working people. And part of what I really like about a People's Movement Assembly, which is not, you know, a process that we invented at all. We're, you know, borrowing from folks in Latin America who are part of the, you know, social forum process that is civil society trying to respond to this fixing. Sorry about the phone back there. Is that it's not just about, you know, it's not going to the solutions first. It's first envisioning and trying to really think big about what it is that we need. And that's incredibly hard to do. I mean, every time we've done it, people have struggled with that piece, but we have to push ourselves to be able to do that, because it is so hard when there's all of these, you know, bombs being thrown our way, or however you want to, you know, characterize that, you know, all of these precariousness that, you know, so many people are in, hanging on by a thread, you know, all the stats about how most Americans, you know, are one crisis away from homelessness. And what are we in right now, if not the biggest crisis ever in my lifetime? And so, it's, you know, that's not a very easy place to vision and dream big. And, you know, or when we have, you know, a quasi dictator who might become a full-on dictator, you know, in a matter of months, or, you know, an opponent party that is really actually in bed with the same funders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if we can't push ourselves to imagine what we really need, this is the time to do that, because as everything is sort of falling apart in front of everybody's eyes, there's the potential for building something new. You know, I mean, the first thing that people have to do is recognize and believe that there isn't any hope in the system as it is. And more people are seeing that. Now, are they plunging into hopelessness? Yes, a lot of people are doing that. I am, you know, witnessing that happening with especially young people who thought that there was, you know, this opportunity with this last election. So it's not that there's automatic, you know, transformational change as a result of a system collapsing. But when the system is going strong and doing well, you know, I can tell you, having been working on this for 20 years, it's a lot harder to get through to people when they're like, I really don't see that there's a problem. What you're saying is bouncing off of me because it doesn't resonate with my reality. And as more and more people's reality comes to be what the reality has been for poor people in this country for, you know, generations, and, you know, people of color forever, there is potential in that, I guess, is my point. And so we really want to take that opportunity to start to have this conversation again, pick it back up in this current context, which is really different than it was a year ago and 3 years ago and 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And, you know, I part of the strategy that I think we've always held at Move to Amend is that we don't start out compromising. And so when we're envisioning that new world and like what a completely different system could look like, we don't start out by thinking like what maybe others will concede, right? Like we have the biggest vision possible and we start there. You start out compromising. So I think, and I agree, like I think that's a really hopeful and optimistic thing to do, right? Like we can hate on, you know, establishment Democrats all day, but like also this is like a being visionary in a time of crisis is like a very brave and optimistic thing to do. Like you said, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, Jessica. And I think that that's what we're really lacking on. Like, it's like, that's why we don't have any leadership, right? And so the coronavirus pandemic happens, and who is it who's able to seize that opportunity? I mean, yes, part of it is that's easier to do when you're a billionaire and you have resources and you have, you know, politicians that you can just call, or you don't even need to because they're on your side. So, you know, in their DNA. But it is telling that even, you know, our side, the people who are supposedly there to fight for, you know, whether it's the We the People Amendment or Medicare for All or, you know, living wage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you know, are caught flat-footed because we are not doing the work to be visionary and to imagine that we actually are going to succeed ultimately. And so, you know, a crisis happens, and the people who see themselves able to succeed are able to say, okay, how do I use this? You know, and it's obviously when we're not in power that, you know, changes the calculus for sure from when you are. But I have just been the main thing that has been astounding to me is that over Medicare for All, for example, there was no situation that illustrates how necessary that is. And we have this, you know, we have the majority of people supportive of it, and we have it in the mainstream discourse. And somehow or other, the best that could be mustered by the people putting forward that policy who have worked their lives on it is like some press releases, you know, back in April or whatever. And that's it. That's it. You know, that's the only way that this is carried forward. And I'm not saying that like McConnell would have passed it, you know, but it's like, how is it possible that we weren't able to move that forward to make that, you know, sort of like a cut and dry discussion? It's just, that's a massive fail. Massive fail.
Yes. Yeah, the biggest fail you could imagine during a global pandemic. I don't know. It seems like the thing to maybe concentrate on a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where we are, right? And that's part of what we have to take into account too, is like, it would be nice to have more leadership on our side, and we don't. So what do we do with that? You know, how do we grow that? And at the same time, we have all this, you know, grassroots, organic leadership being shown in terms of responding to, you know, police violence and,
Right.
and organized violence against Black people in our communities. And that, you know, that to me is like, we're capable of the leadership. We just have some people in the way, and we're not taking the responsibility ourselves to say, you know, of our leaders, you either need to get on board, you need to figure this out, or you're not serving us. So maybe step out of that role for a while or something. Anyway, we're avoiding talking about this week, I see. I am, because it's like, I don't want, you know, like this week was just felt really bad to me. And yet, you know, I don't want to like dwell in any one week. That's part of why this program is kind of, I have mixed feelings about it. You know, I prefer to talk about the big picture rather than the small, but I do think we should talk about the post office a bit. Because that is, that's another place where there's not very much leadership being shown, but maybe the Postal Workers Union will, you know, step forward. It seems as though, I mean, they either do or they're gonna be gone. And so, you know, maybe that will help, but all of the rest of us need to figure out how to support them. I can't believe that we're in this situation. It's like, we might not have a post office.
I know, it's wild. And I agree. I think the Postal Workers Union is going to be really interesting. I mean, I think most times when a general strike in some place has been effective, like, unions have had a large role. I'm just really interested to see what they're doing. But the post office is a big deal. Like, so I'm from super rural Northern California. Most people in my family and people that I know, UPS isn't delivering their doors. They live in the woods. Like, rural people need the post office. I think a lot of people don't understand how that works. Like, my family's not getting their mail. If there's a post office, they have a box in town and they have to go into town and get their mail. No one delivers to rural people. And that's where you get like money orders. A lot of people have to pay their rent with money orders. Like, the banking in rural communities, a lot of that's time, like, you have this for these. People don't understand how important the post office is for rural communities. And, you know, like, we can't privatize the mail. That's like a real core need, that we need to be like public and accessible. And for so many reasons, we can't privatize the mail. That just seems like the most absurd sentence to even say out loud. Like, come on. And it's really personal to me. Like, from just like why it's important. My mom was a marrier until I was probably 20, and I spent a lot of time at the post office, and I just have really fun memories of the post office. And it's like this to like community hubs, you know what I mean? The post office feels, it's like this, can access all kinds of services, and I have like sentimental feelings about the post office, from just why it's super important. And this is not good.
I saw recently that a lot of the people who work at the post office are women and people of color. You know, maybe that's less, well, women, but obviously your mom, but in terms of, you know, your community, maybe not so much people of color, but that is also, so it's like disproportionately yet again, you know, infrastructure being dismantled is going to personally affect the livelihoods of, and it's what, you know, it's, and also a lot of people who are immigrants too. So it's, and who's going to benefit if we get rid of the post office, if not Jeff Bezos and whoever owns FedEx, you know, like, it's just another corporate power grab in the long run. And in the short run, obviously, there's huge implications for whether we're able to have an election in November. which obviously, you know, is Trump's first and foremost agenda. But it's one of those things where it's like, when you've got the vision and you're ready to go, you know, it's like, how can I help myself and incidentally, you know, screw over the way that they are able to think of the bang for the buck opportunities, whereas we're like putting together little tinkering little demands is kills me.
Embarrassing and sad, and just like, it's nothing really. I've said this to you a million times. You know, nothing saddens me more than wasted organizing energy and low standards. Like, those things make me so fundamentally sad, and I just feel like that's exactly what we're seeing, and it's just. But there's also, right, like I feel like it should be said that there's also what's happening like in Portland, and the resistance is very exciting right now, and it's in all of our timelines like it was a few weeks ago. But like, we shouldn't lose the respect for the organic organizing and resistance that's happening.
Right. And even though the hashtag went away, I don't know what happened, whether Twitter, I mean, because Twitter does do that. They manipulate what trends and have, you know, I've seen it with my own eyes as something is like ascending, and then all of a sudden it won't show up, and then that makes it so that it, you know, kind of kills it. And as you said, you know, aptly, of course, a hashtag is not a movement or an action, but the energy with the general strike, which is something that people have been saying, you know, since this spring, but just kind of like the reaction of like, you know, and people talking about going to Congress members' homes, which Movement for a People's Party tried to do last month in preparation for this, of like, okay, well, how do we escalate? We need to go to and move to amend, signed on to that action, because it made a lot of sense to us that you know, Congress really should have taken care of this way back when, and this was their opportunity to make right. And, you know, honestly, I really didn't think that they would actually do nothing, but there was, you know, and people weren't really ready yet. There were, you know, there were some actions that happened, but they were smaller than they needed to be, obviously, than what would have been necessary to make Congress actually stay there, figure it out. And so, you know, maybe this will be what it takes, but, you know, they're not at their offices. They're all working, their staff are all working from home. So, you know, and it just feels like there does need to be an escalation. This is how this works, you know? I mean, when you're ignored, you have to then escalate to, that's the way you do, you know, social change. So here we are. We need to figure out a strategic escalation.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's home. There's not some abstract thing that's responsible for this. Like, there are human beings behind this lack of action, and those people have to be held accountable. And whatever that looks like now might be different than it has before. And we have to be open to that diversity of tactics. So.
Yeah, and you know, it goes without saying that should still be nonviolent, but there's a history of that being what happens in this country. You know, we don't really hear about it, but actually, the American Revolution was, you know, about going to, before it actually became the full-blown, you know, war with Britain. It was going to the homes of the British governors in the colonies and running them out of town, actually. That's what happened in Massachusetts and in some other states as well. And that was, you know, before the Boston Tea Party even. And so that, to me, makes a lot of sense. You know, I don't think that they should have peace and quiet for a month while everybody is evicted from their homes. So would love to hear if anybody out there has ideas or thoughts, questions, things you're thinking about. I saw Karen on Facebook did point out I wanted to put this up, the Delivering for America Act, which does need to happen. So, you know, contacting your reps. But and we should do that. But we also need to figure out, obviously they are not paying attention to us with just the phone calls, right? So we as a people need to figure out what to do about that. I do just want to make sure that everybody knows that we are also trying to prioritize having meetings with everyone, senators and House members this month. Got a little bit messed up because, well, the House has been on recess since July, but the Senate, we were kind of waiting to see what was going to happen with this and letting them prioritize it. And then presumably they were going to do something and then they would all go home and we could focus on the We the People amendment. So we do have a page on our site, movetoamend.org/lobby for this month with materials for how you can set up a meeting with your rep or your senator. We are at 74 co-sponsors in the House, and our goal is to get to 75 before the end of the year. And we really, in all the years up till now in the House, we have been able to, pass our goal by a lot. That's just the pace that we have set. This year, we're behind that pace, or the unofficial pace, because of the fact that it's been kind of hard to get any attention on systemic issues given the immediate crises, which they're not doing anything about, but they use that as an excuse for why they can't talk about other stuff. So this month, let's make sure to zero in on them. If your rep is not yet a co-sponsor, holding a meeting with them virtually, it's easier than it would have been otherwise. We could even join you, somebody from the national team or one of our local chapters nearby you, if there's not one in your area. So all the info is on our site. And as Jessica said, we are going to be doing this People's Movement Assembly on envisioning a new constitution. We haven't figured out exactly what we're calling it yet, but that's the topic. Later in the fall, probably in September, October. Oop, we lost her. And then if you go to movetoamend.org, I see Anna here, bring it back, Jessica. Sorry. No worries. So Annalise, if you go to movetoamend.org/amendment, you can see the text of the amendment, but also at the top of that page is a link over to the page on congress.gov where you can see the current list of co-sponsors. So you can see if your rep is a co-sponsor yet. And then no matter what, your senator is not going to be, because it hasn't been introduced in the Senate yet. We do have a senator who's willing to introduce it, but he has said that he would like 5 colleagues to join him. And I have to say, Kamala Harris was one of our top targets to be one of those 5. And her office just totally dragged their feet and had no answer. And, we've been leaning hard on Feinstein and Harris here in California. And frankly, we were getting more traction with Feinstein's office, believe it or not, at least her staff. And with Harris's, it was always just like, yes, we will be talking to the senator next week and we can give you an answer. And I've been hearing that literally for a year. So that's part of my feeling about that situation. But we really, we need to focus on those senators, because if we don't get it introduced this year, we'll be even more behind. And so much of what is happening now is happening because our lawmakers serve corporate interests rather than their constituents. And, even those who maybe would like to do differently are somewhat in a position where at a minimum they have to do a lot of fundraising in order to stay in there. And so, all of that needs to be addressed, not to mention the fact that, anytime we are able to, at the state level or at the local level, organize ourselves to fight back against corporate harm, that harm is potentially undermined, or that win is potentially undermined by the ability of corporations to sue our government for violating their constitutional rights. So both of those two things. And actually, that reminds me, one thing I did want to mention, I forgot to tell you that I would say this, Jessica, and I don't have all the details, so I'll try to put together a post on Move to Amend's social media about this later. But in California, there is a bill to address the fact that personal care products so there's almost no regulation of personal care products. So like lotion, makeup, stuff like that, hair, all of those things. There's almost no regulation. The FDA is technically responsible for overseeing it, but they haven't passed any regulation, and they don't really have authority to enforce anything since the 1930s. And so as a result, and that's like before, World War II and the surge of chemicals that we have in our products after that. And so there's, something like 30,000 chemicals that have not even been tested that are in our products. So in California, there's a law to require the ingredient fragrance, which actually is allowed to include all kinds of things, and there's no disclosure about it, including some really toxic stuff, and that's counted as a trade secret. And so companies can put fragrance and then sneak all kinds of stuff in. So there's like almost no regulation, and then the teeny little bit that there is that they have to actually tell us what's in the products is hidden with another layer by this whole fragrance idea. So in California, there's a law to require fragrance ingredients to be disclosed, and it just passed through all the committees that it needed to, and it's going to go to the assembly before the end of the month. And if it passes, with California being the huge economy that it is in the world, that will make a big difference and potentially change the industry in a major way. I'm curious to see what will happen if it does pass, and whether some company will sue California and make the argument that that violates their constitutional right not to speak, which we have seen ample precedent happen, including in California, when California has tried to require labeling. So we'll see, but first step is to try and pass it. And so if you live in California, again, stay tuned for a post on Move to Amend's social media. I'll put something together for how folks can contact about that. So teeny little bit of good news, which may just be really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Really important. Not only because of the corporate constitutional rights situation that presents, which could be potentially huge, but also just like, you and I personally have like really vested interest in like not having, lethal toxins in our products. I think that, there's an increased number of people with autoimmune conditions, and like all the time, people are discovering that things in their products and environments have just created health problems for them. And of course, because like there's no regulations about what happens, and under under the law, corporations have to maximize profit. And so of course, like they don't have your health and safety in mind most of the time, if they can get away with it. So
absolutely. Really, like even legally, if they wanted to, they almost couldn't, but yeah, most of them don't want to. Yeah. And the health impacts of this, there's chronic issues and poisoning around autoimmune issues, but some of it is cancer, reproductive cancers totally on the rise, and also the products that we use on babies have no regulation either. So there's not even any sort of choice, right? So it's like Johnson & Johnson using talc that contained lead for years and years and years. And when they stopped, it was because they chose to. And meanwhile, the products that they make for other countries, they still don't take the lead out. So that's what happens when we leave it up to corporations. So that's why we need, these policies. And, in a way, I obviously would rather this law pass than it to happen, but it almost is like, prove our point about why corporations shouldn't have constitutional rights. So, is there anything else that we're coming up on 40 minutes? Normally we do 30 minutes to an hour for this. But are there any questions that folks would like us to answer about Move to Amend, anything we've talked about, or anything else that you want to raise? Anything, Jessica, that we didn't say that you think we should too?
I just wanted to, again, remind everybody that we have a new version of the Movement Education Program out. The Movement Education Program is something Move to Amend's done since the beginning as an effort to make good on our value of ongoing political education. So it's a curriculum. Some of it's written by us, some of it is from others that's been curated, and you can do it as a group. If you're a Move to Amend affiliate, you can do it online together, or if you're not a Move to Amend group but you want to do a study of how systemic oppressions show up in our organizing and how we can be better, you can do it that way. Or if you're just an individual, you can do it that way. And I think it speaks to some of the ways that corporate power ties into all of these other things that we're seeing, and the conditions that we're in as a matter of corporate abuse. So check it out. It's free and it's self-paced. You can do it at your own speed. And what else is going on? We're going to have a public presentation, Kaitlin, that you're going to do September 3rd, right?
Yeah, that's true. It will be basically kind of like a background on, why we need to end corporate constitutional rights and pass the We the People Amendment. I want to make it, more relevant to the current time. But we're going to do a, kind of national presentation. So that'll be probably done through a webinar, an opportunity for folks to tune in there and share it with your friends too. So we'll be putting together a Facebook event and stuff like that soon. It's in about 3 weeks or so, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Sometime in September, which feels a million years away, but isn't. Let's see. We do have a couple questions. There was a question about timeline in mind for a general strike. I mean, so just to be clear, Move to Amend is not organizing a general strike, although depending on the details, may officially stand with it. Certainly, us as individuals do. So as Jessica said, I mean, most of this is all just there is what's the name of the group? Is it just generalstrike.org? There is a site that was put up kind of at the beginning of, the pandemic crisis. I'm just looking to see if that is what it is. No, I think that's not it. But you could try doing an internet search. There's basically just organic self-organizing happening around that. People are talking about September 1st, maybe. There was also an attempt to do something on, May Day. But, we just didn't really have the pressure yet. We collectively, everybody. So soon, hopefully soon, right? I mean, it's almost too late already, but, now's the time. And I'm also seeing people saying, oh, well, we can't do that. We need to focus on the election, and we can do all this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, exactly. September 1st seems like it's going to be maybe a time because rent is due. There's no money for rent. And I don't know about other places, but the utilities around here have started shutting people off who they had playing shutoffs for up until now. So I don't know about everywhere, but if people are don't have air conditioning, it's 117 degrees outside here, find out.
Yeah.
Greg is asking, what's the Pledge to Amend? So that's a good question. Pledge to Amend is a campaign that we have where candidates for office and elected officials take a pledge to support the We the People Amendment and to use their office to address issues of corporate power and money in politics. So obviously there's lots going on right now electorally. We are asking candidates of all offices to pledge, whether that's super local office or federal office or in between. So you can go movetoamend.org/pledge, and we keep a list of all of the candidates who have signed the pledge so that you can be aware of people's stance on the issue.
I think that's to the actual pledge, although from there you can get to the list too. I think it's pledge-amend for the actual list of who's taken the pledge. And then Karen wanted to share, looks like for some people the link didn't work. So those of you on Facebook already saw this, but this is an article about kind of the backstory of how long the post office has been under attack and what's been happening with that. That's in these times. So if you're not on Facebook and you can't grab this link, you could just go to In These Times and find their article on the post office situation.
Genstrike.org.
Yeah, I put that up too. Just thank you to those of you who looked that up. So if you want to learn more or want to start to get involved in the conversation, I would also say Twitter would be the place to go. It was interesting to see how like Facebook was absolutely dead in terms of that conversation compared to Twitter.
I know, Twitter's where it's at.
Yeah, so that's my plug for if you actually want to know what's going on, go to Twitter. And will newly pledged candidates get a shout out from Move to Amend, like an official photo with a thank you or something? Yeah, that does happen. So we send a message when candidates take the pledge. We get back to them and we give them like a little badge that they can put on their site if they take the pledge. And then we also post that to our social media. So we actually got a whole bunch of pledges in the last month. So we might be a little behind on the posting to social media part, but candidates actually get that first and the thank you from us and all that. So yes, that is a thing. And you can go to our Facebook and see an album of all the people who have taken the pledge as well. Although now that the primaries are over in most states, we need to do an update in the next couple of weeks for the general. I'm just making sure that the only candidates on there are folks who made it through to the general. Right. Here's where you can see the general strike hashtag and connect with people who are organizing on Twitter for it. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Well, this week was kind of intense and kind of a disaster, but I just always feel so grateful to be able to do work on the amendment and towards like dismantling corporate power, because it's the only thing that helps me feel at all centered right now. And, it's really, there's a million things going on and it's really hard to know where to put our energy and our love, and our money. And I think that like having confidence that corporate power is at the root of so much of what we're seeing helps me feel focused. So, check us out if you're not a part of the Move to Amend crew already. And if you are, thank you, because I know you live and breathe it. And as Kaitlin said earlier, we, have laid off all of our staff, have like laid ourselves off, and we're funded entirely by like grassroots donations. All the staff still give to Move to Amend. It's quite a scrappy situation. So if you get something out of this, if you take the movement education program and you like it, if you think that we're doing important work, then please consider giving. A monthly donation helps the most because it allows us to foresee our budget for the future and be able to plan accordingly. But we really appreciate anything that you can spare to make this work happen, because it's rough out there for people doing real change work right now.
Absolutely. Yep. I just want to echo what Jessica said. Thank you to all of you who support Move to Amend already, and connecting with folks this month to hold, virtual meetings with your senators and House members is a great way to link in with Move to Amend. And there are folks who are already getting started on that. And if you go to movetoamend.org/lobby, you can sign up there, and we'll connect you with other people in your area if you need a team to help you do it. And all the materials are there too. So it's kind of right now the most timely way, because that is something that we always do during the August recess. And we talked about whether we should do that again this year, and decided that yes, that people are asking for us to do that and want to do that. And there was a lot of interest when we launched that at the beginning of August, or actually it was kind of at the end of July. So, I know there's a lot of other pressing stuff that's more immediate, but as Jessica, spoke to, if we don't address the long-term systemic underlying reasons for why we are in the crises that we are in, then, even if we're able to come out of them, we're not going to be, any better off or much better off. And that's regardless of who's sitting in the White House and, other details like that. And so it's been hard, honestly, under Trump presidency to remind people and help people, remember and stay focused on the long game. But every minute that we don't do that, we're making it more likely that, we're not going to get there in terms of before climate collapse, which isn't even a thing that we've talked about this week. But it's always
yeah.
So,
yeah. Under the umbrella.
So thanks for all the work. I know a number of you who are listening, you do put your time in every single day, and thank you for that. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thanks.
Yeah.
So if you're tuning into this and you're not listening to or if you're listening to the recording and you're not listening live and you still have questions, you can type them in whichever platform you're on, and our team will get to them as soon as we can. But you can also always contact us through our website, movetoamend.org. And I think that might be it for us, right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I don't know who's going to be on next week, but it will be at the same time, noon. Well, right now, that's the live report. So I do a monthly like kind of recap of everything corporate rule news-wise and move to amend news-wise at the end of every month. So that's coming up in a little bit. But we also do this Making Sense every week, and it's a little bit more kind of off the cuff and whatever's going on. And I don't know who from our team will be on next week. I forgot to check that out, but 2 people will be here. And so you can tune in every week. And if there's stuff that you want them to talk about, you can let them know, and they probably will address it, just like we try to.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for all the comments. Oh, you all are so great. I love this community.
Yeah, have a good weekend as best you can. Those of you in California, and that probably goes for Vegas as well, stay cool. California's supposed to be 110 in Sacramento this weekend. Stay safe, be careful of fires, and watch out for coronavirus and fascists. Be wary.
All that. Good luck, everybody.
All right, everyone. Take care. Thanks so much for engineering, as always.
Yes, thank you. All right. Bye, Kaitlin.
Bye.